Good morning. Welcome back. I'm Sean, and this is the Mountains Garage YouTube channel. Thanks for stopping by. Today, in the sunny, warm state of Maine, it's early morning. My stomach's probably going to growl a few times during the video because I haven't had breakfast yet. And we're going to talk about an excellent suggestion I got for a video quite a while ago now. Most of the time the videos just kind of present themselves and I don't get back often enough to the ones that were suggested or asked if I could talk about, which I appreciate any input. I love any interaction with the people watching, so don't hesitate. I try to get to them all. If I missed any of them over the couple years here, I'm sorry. I do my best, but usually I try to answer. So if you took the time to write, I'm going to do the same. If I ever get so big I can't, well, I have to hire somebody to do that, and I don't see that happening. So the main goal of this video is to go over the exact techniques of making your first run or runs in a quick and fast car. Most drag races, this is about drag racing, go through the natural progression. They might start with a street car and gradually get faster, and that's a good way to do it. Still things you need to know along the way, but the beauty of drag racing, the people are awesome, and most everybody is willing to help or guide you if you don't know what you should be doing. Or, oftentimes, especially nowadays, fast cars are everywhere. A lot of people buy, build, acquire. If you're building the car, you're probably a little more intimate with it. You might have just bought one turnkey. Whatever the situation, you're going to need to know a few things. If you are getting into a sport, any sport, could be golf, tennis, or whatever, most people study the rules so they know what's acceptable and what isn't. Some reason drag racing because people are accustomed to driving their cars every day. I don't know why there is such a divide of knowledge about what you need. Well, I guess I do understand. Most people don't want to read that, rule book that's that thick. The first line, I'm talking about the NHRA rule book, but other sanctioning bodies come and go. Most will accept the NHRA rule book as being the most detailed. The first line, or one of the first lines in the rule book, is you are responsible for your own safety. And that means I'm ad-libbing here. It's not the guys, your peers, what they're getting away with it doing. It's not the tech people in line that you're going to get mad at when they tell you need something that you don't have. It should never get that far. Read the rule book. And in some cases, in modern day, I got a sidebar here a little bit, it's never been easier to speed up or slow down a fast car with your laptop. So having time-based needs for safety items seems a little bit antiquated, but it's a very difficult subject. This video is not going to be all about safety, but before you get strapped in to do your work behind the wheel, you got to be prepared. And fortunately, for the sport of drag racing in the last 10 years, thanks to TV shows and YouTube and other formats like that, it's in front of you a lot. Every day I can go see somebody making passes somewhere. And most of the time, your big YouTube and social media influencers, I guess is what they're called, are learning as they go, and they're not necessarily making the right choices as far as safety gear goes. So don't follow what they do or what they're getting away with. A lot of that is trending the wrong direction, unfortunately. So all you can do is protect yourself. Oh, and I'm only speaking from my perspective. I don't like hospitals. I don't want to go in the hospital. I've never been badly burned. I've never been crushed or had my arm ripped off by a drive shaft. And I don't want to. So if I'm going to sit in the car, I'm going to make sure I can return the throttle. I just watched a video the other day. Brand new car. The guy just finished. A very seasoned driver. He had a tow hook on the throttle, which is above your foot. So if the throttle sticks, you can pull it back. But his rate of acceleration, he didn't calculate the gap between his foot down and his foot up as being so large, and the amount of distance he covered trying to yank it back up, he got into the wall. minor damage to the car, but he said he could have fixed it if his foot fit better on the pedal. So lots of things like that don't become apparent until it's actually happening. I'm going to make sure my area I'm strapped into the vehicle, I am helpless. If the drive shaft is not contained and it can reach me, that's bad. If my head can contact the roll cage because it's not padded properly, I don't have the pads next to my head, or something to prevent my head from going like this, because this will kill you if it happens rapidly. I want to make sure my cocoon is as safe as possible. I'm going to make sure I am wearing the highest level of SFI rated suit. I've gone over this before, but if I have a 20 suit, that's 40 seconds before I have burns on my body. I forget what degree, but I don't care. Any burn is something I don't want. You're going to sweat in a race car. I can wash the sweat off afterwards. I've raced on days that were so hot. When you get out and take your suit off, and I only had a 15 suit at the time, it feels cool, and it's 90 degrees and humid out. That's how hot it is in the race car. So drink plenty of water. I can go home and shower. It beats going to the hospital. I might not be conscious. 40 seconds may not be enough time for the people to come save me, if there are people to come save you. A lot of these ho-dunk tracks, there's nobody there. It's you and your fire, and you may not even be conscious. So give yourself a chance. All the suits are expensive. You're going to sweat regardless. Why not have the most protection you can get? That's me. I'm not getting in the car without it. I'm not getting in the car without an engine diaper. I'm not running over my own fluids. A lot of safety devices prevent you from needing more safety devices. So there's a good reason why most of your funny car pilots pop out of the hatch after a blazing inferno and the body's melted down over them, because they have all the stuff on. So they got the boots, the head sock, everything. Just wear it. Again, you're going to sweat. So I think that's about it on safety. You get my point. It's up to you to make sure you're protected. Now let's drive the race car. So you're strapped in the car, waiting for your turn. You know, the cars are running in front of you. That's noisy as well. I like to have control of my own door, or I have somebody helping me, one person outside the car to, you know, if it's really hot, maybe open both doors. You can't do that when you're strapped in, but you should be able to at least control your driver's door, reaching around your window net. But now the engine starts, and to me, that's when I get calm. Up until that point, I'm thinking about maybe modifications I've done and hopefully they're going to work okay, how I'm going to operate things, or maybe I'm making my 100th path on the same combination, and I'm just thinking about my competition. Once the engine starts, I don't see people. I don't see people watching me. I'm not nervous. I just see my task at hand, and that's the attitude you need to have to be successful. If you're still nervous when the engine runs, you need to calm down or somehow adapt to that. But being nervous while you're doing stuff, there's no time for that. So I can't fix that. But if you know what I mean, if you've been there and you're still nervous doing it more will help, no question. So if you really want to drag race, be a drag racer, push through that and get to the point where you're comfortable. So the first thing we're going to do is a burnout. You want your tires hot and sticky. If you're watching this, you already know why you're doing a burnout. And it's not just to be cool in front of your friends. It has a function because you want to make it down the track without spinning the tires. And the tires work when they're hot and sticky. It's up to you to know how hot and sticky. Are you going to boil them so they're gooey, or you just want to haze them a little bit? These are all things you need to know before you pull into the water box. Let's talk about pulling into the water box. I think this is one of the biggest reasons why people in fast cars who are new to fast cars have trouble and/or crash. You have a puddle, might be 6 feet wide. Do not stop in the middle of the puddle and spin the tires. Was probably a good thing when you had a couple hundred horsepower. I don't even think you need it then. If you can't do a burnout in a puddle of water, I can't help you. So anyway, drive through the puddle to the edge. It's wet out beyond it. That's where you want to be. You don't want to be in the puddle. You can be slightly outside of the puddle, but the more people that do that, the further the puddle gets dragged, depending on how hot the sun is and how fast it's drying. But find the edge of the puddle. If you have somebody directing you, like for instance, the track worker, they don't know because people either do one or the other, either spin and pull forward or just pull forward. If they went like this to me, I would shake my head and There was one lady at New England Dragway, she's awesome. She knew exactly what I meant, and she would pull me to the edge where I need to be, because you don't want to put more water in the wheel wells. If you spin the tires in the puddle and then start to spin the tires when you pull forward to do your burnout, you just put 2 coats of water inside the wheel wells, and what's going to happen? It's going to drip back down in front of the tire, on the tire. Completely opposite of what we want to happen. So pull forward, and now we're going to set the line lock. If you have a brake pressure gauge and you know what pressure holds the car still, that's a great tool. If you're building a car, put one in. Plumb it in line with the front brakes, because that's what the line lock does. You already know that, hopefully. You're holding the front brakes on just so you can start the tires spinning. I'm not going to do my burnout sitting in the edge of this puddle. I'm not going to stop my burnout and pull through water that's in front of my tires against what we're trying to do. I'm going to know my transmission. I know what gear I need to be in, whether it's a manual, whether it's a Lenco, whether it's an automatic. Turbo 400, you better be starting in second. We've covered that before. So know your transmission and what you need to do. Set the line lock. Most people just pump it a few times and push the button because they don't have a gauge. Whatever works. You need to master, well, you have 2 options. You can have RPM limit for the burnout, RPM limit for your high end so you don't explode the engine, and an RPM limit for the starting line. A 3-step is what it's called. Or I never had an RPM limit on my burnout. I just had a trained right foot. I know how to snap the throttle to get the tires to spin, because I had 17-inch wide rubber on a sticky track. You know, you have to get them spinning. You don't want to bog the motor down, stall the engine, have it sit there and not spinning the tires. So it's an art form. Just snap the throttle and then immediately start pulling it back up so you don't over rev the engine. Get right in the sweet spot. Immediately put it in high gear. I don't care what you got for a transmission, or if you have a manual and you can't shift it in the burnout, you're stuck in whatever gear you have. But as soon as I put it in high gear, I let go of the line lock. And I'm going to burn out away from the water puddle. Now, how far I can burn out depends on the rules of my class. If I'm allowed to go over the starting line, that's a lot harder than it looks. You have to control, listen to your wheel speed. If you have an automatic and you're doing a long smoky burnout and the car gets any yaw to it and you snap the throttle off because you're getting out of control, it's going to go exactly where it's pointed. And that will surprise you. If you have a clutch pedal, you can disengage the engine from the tires and the car's just going to stop doing the burnout. So in this case, a manual transmission with a clutch is safer because you can save yourself a lot faster. You see a lot of burnouts get out of control, and that's why. So try to gently keep it in control in a straight line, and whether you're going to stop your burnout this side of the starting line or go over and have to back up, work that out ahead of time. There's way too many people in all these videos and a lot of these races on the starting line. I ran Top Sportsman. We were allowed 1 person to help. And that person is really helpful. They'll help line you up if needed. You should be able to line the car up yourself without help. But if you're allowed a helper, go ahead and use it, because they can see things that you can't inside the car. Also, the recent trend of somebody reaching in and steering the car for you when you back up looks like a colossal waste of time. It just looks dumb. I don't know how far that trend is going to go, but I hope it doesn't catch on, because we don't need any more just drags and drag racing, dragging the whole program down. You can follow somebody going like this, but you don't need somebody grabbing your steering wheel and backing the car up for you. I hate it when my clicker times out because I'm talking too much. So you burned out, you backed up. Now it's time to stage the car and make the run. Courtesy staging is when both cars light the top yellow bulb before going any further into the beams to light the second stage bulb. If that's a rule in your class, you have to follow it. If it's not a rule in your class, it's good courtesy. If you're looking to play head games in the starting line and there's no rules against it, you can go right in and light them both. So that's another tool. If that's the kind of racer you are, That's not up to me to decide, but normally you light your top bulb. Again, that's when I calm myself down, wait for the other guy to light his. After one car or the other has lit both bulbs, so you're fully staged, there's a random amount of time, up to 7 seconds, that you have, if you're the one going in last, to get in there. So if you're more comfortable being the first one to go in or the last one to go in, rehearse that, practice it. If we're just doing licensing passes, say that 10 times, you're by yourself, so your reaction time doesn't matter. We can work on that later, but stage the car. Know ahead of time if you're, for instance, when I drive an automatic vehicle, I've always used both feet. A lot of times in your trans brake instructions, it tells you to raise the RPM a little bit. So I usually try to go in, 12, 1300 RPM, maybe 1500, holding the throttle when I set the trans brake, because I'm going to let go of the brakes and I want the car to stay still. If you go in at idle, it's possible the car, depending on which trans brake locks the transmission in forward and reverse, whichever one's more dominant, it may make you go forward or backward when you let go of the button if you don't have enough pressure in the transmission. So rev it up a little bit, set the line lock, ease your foot off the brake. This is all happening really fast. If you're running a delay box, depending on where you're going to release the button and when you actually floor the throttle, you'll work all that out. But these are all things that happen on the start line. It looks like a simple procedure from the outside of the car, but the driver has a lot going on. Your reaction, I miss the incandescent bulbs. The incandescent bulbs, you could watch them come on and off, where LEDs just, they're on or off. There's no reading them. I think it's a lot more difficult now to be really good on the starting line, where in the past you could actually read the bulb and you're used to when I saw it start to come on, I could let go and I was good. In whatever particular car I was driving, you adjust to that. But either way, you need to adjust to it eventually. But today we're just trying to make the car get on the track. These are all things you need to learn to become a good racer. But right now we're just trying to get from A to B. So now we're actually under power, headed down track. If you're driving a fast or quick car, people want to argue the difference, but fast is slang, whatever. Things happen really fast. And be prepared for that, but your reaction, the more mile an hour, the less your reaction to the steering wheel needs to be. You cannot make giant corrections at 180 miles an hour or 200 miles an hour. You can't do it. You're going to wreck the car. It's almost like instinct, like you're hooked to the vehicle and you know exactly what's going to control it. You need to learn that feel. At any point in the track, if it starts to go left or right and you don't need to be a hero to try to save it, just abort the run. If you're doing licensing passes, you're going to do you're going to leave the starting line, you're going to go a little further each pass in the 5 or 6 passes they make you do under supervision to get your license. And that's done so you can get used to exactly what I'm talking about, the whole procedure. They can't drive the car for you. There's nothing magic going to happen when they give you the piece of paper. It just means that you were smart enough to go ease into this whole process. So if you're driving a car fast enough to need a license, you need to get a feel for it. And that's what the licensing passes do. Why do I have so much trouble saying that? Get you used to the procedure so it becomes not old hat. Because trust me, you can never relax once you release the button or whatever makes you go forward on a drag strip and you have a lot of power. You don't know what's going to happen. So you got to be ready for it. Ultimately, you make it all the way down. Now we're approaching the scoreboard, so you need to know the track enough to know if you're driving a fast car and you have a parachute. Well, hopefully you're like me and you've read the instructions that come with the parachute. I guarantee you most people haven't. You see way too many people go through, lift off the throttle, and then throw the lever for the parachutes. Wrong. You throw them under power. That parachute should deploy just about the exact time you're going to lift out of the throttle. If you drive into it a little bit, that's even better. If you watch, for instance, the class of Pro Stock, they're always close at the finish line. The parachutes are out and just about to blossom, and they're going through the speed trap trying to win the race. Because shutting the car down, stopping on the top end is no easy task if you're going fast. And there's only one way to get used to that. You got to feel it. So drive into the chute. You don't want it to pop when you're already trying to slow down. The hardest part about stopping is the first second or two. So if the chute is already out when you lift it off the throttle, it's going to hold you straighter. No guarantee it's perfectly straight because it could be crosswinds or the track surface, whatever. Be prepared and don't get right on the brakes. Let the chute grab the car, then gradually start applying the brakes. I know a lot of people, well, not a lot of people, but some people have wrecked their car at this point when they swapped over to carbon fiber brakes that apparently grab really fast. I never had them. I had just organic stuff. But you're not going to know your brakes grab too hard at 200 miles an hour until you're actually doing it. So hopefully you've eased up on it at this point. You got a feel for the brakes, but gingerly apply them. Hopefully if you're going that fast, you have a pretty long shutdown area. And a lot of times you have to be careful not to stop too much with the chutes out and with the engine off, if that's what you can do. We'll talk about that in a second, to make the turn off. So that's all things you need to learn. And this is going to change track to track. There's rules down there while you're trying to do all this about who gets to turn off first. Know the track rules. Is it the guy closest to the wall, typically, that gets to cut off first, and you got to let him go, her, I keep saying him, the driver of the other car. So this is all etiquette you need to know, and it varies by racetrack, but common sense should apply here. You don't want to run into each other just trying to make the turn off. So what do you do with the engine while this is happening? If you have a clutch pedal, you can push it in and click off the ignition while this whole process is taking place. One more thing to do as a driver, but that is a lot easier on the engine as far as the oil sloshing away from the pickup and everything that happens while you're trying to stop the car. And it's excellent for reading spark plugs. But once again, know your transmission. If you have an automatic transmission and the engine isn't running, you don't have safety neutral if you bought that in your valve body, because if the engine isn't running, it's not working. You're going to over accelerate the direct drum. Or whatever transmission you have, know what happens and talk to your transmission guy. If you do it wrong, the last thing you need while you're trying to control a car and get it stopped is a transmission to blow up next to you. And that's very likely to happen if you don't know what to do at this point. And at that point is not the time to learn you did something wrong. So know this ahead of time. I see a lot of people, safety neutral turbo 400. A lot of the shifters now go backwards. I don't think I could get used to that, but they go, second, third. The next one away from the normal neutral is neutral again. They'll go that, then they'll shut the engine off. You just negated safety neutral. So know your transmission. Now you've made the turn off. Nothing bad happened on the run. This is, once again, where you need to know the track enough, or at least have enough common sense to realize you're dragging your parachute or parachutes. You need to safely get off somewhere out of people's way to roll your chutes up, put them back in the car so you can get back down to your pit. So wait for the people to come get you if you're being towed by a golf cart. But this is some of the greatest times in a race car. As soon as you step out, no matter how hot it is out, it feels cooler than the car. That's my stomach growling if you heard it. And it's just a wonderful feeling. You made a good pass. You lived through it. Nothing bad happened. But what if something bad happened? Well, during the run, if you feel something wrong, get out of the groove. It's not all about you. You can make another run. You can get back in the car, but don't oil the track from one end to the other because you weren't kind enough or have enough courtesy to get out of the groove over against the wall. If you're leaking fluid, you don't need to coat the whole track. I see this normal courtesy violated a lot by some big names that should know better but don't. It's not all about, if you just did a giant wheelie and almost bounced off the wall, don't pull back in the middle of the lane and drive the rest of the track, because you don't know if you just smashed your oil pan or not. So anything goes wrong, get out of the groove. If you're on fire and you're conscious, when you're going 200 miles an hour, you probably don't want to put the fire bottles off, because the wind coming through the car might blow that halon or whatever you got for a fire suppressant. It might not do its job. So if you're conscious that you have a fire, and again, try to get out of the groove if you can. If you can stop near the safety people, that's going to help too, but that's not always ideal. and not your biggest concern. You want to get stopped and get out of the car. If you're in the left lane, don't get too crazy against the left wall, because you still need to get your door open to get out. So, at some point, your safety is going to be more important than you maybe wrecking the lane for a small area while they clean up your mess. But the biggest thing is you got to get out of the car. So, and again, hopefully you're conscious and you haven't hit anything. But be aware that, the halon or whatever you got for a suppressing system, if you can pull that as you get slowed down, then that gives you time to get out, and it works because it's not being blown into the air. So you got to time your fire bottle release. Sensors that melt now is pretty popular in the cockpit and stuff, that they get to a certain temperature and they automatically release it, regardless of speed, I guess. But when things are going wrong, you want to give yourself as much time as possible to get out. If you hit something, you get out of shape, you slap the wall, you run into somebody, you run over the timing cones, somebody runs into you, same deal. Get it stopped. Try not to spread your parts for the rest of the track, if it's in your control. If you're still bouncing off stuff, I watch a lot of aviation channels where they go over what happened in an airplane crash. And the most important thing, if you're flying an airplane or driving a race car, never stop flying the airplane. Right to the end of the crash site, don't give up on it. Keep trying to do whatever you can to get the situation under control. Right up to the point where you can't, you fail. Do your best. There's no training ever gonna be ready for that situation. I don't think there's simulators, at least in drag racing, that can walk you through that. And ultimately, you don't have to, but always be aware it could happen the very next pass. It's a lot of times you get used to things going right, and one of these times it might not. It's gonna happen. Hopefully it never does. Likely to happen. So give yourself the best chance. That was kind of my theme in the fires of safety. I'm going to give myself the best chance to be able to do this again. So I hope that somebody out there somewhere gets something out of this video. If it helped you, great. I have had a few incidents. I've been lucky to not have anything real bad. So I'm thankful for that. And it's been a while since I've made a pass down a drag strip. But I'm not done yet. You never know. Could be next weekend. Could be 5 years from now. Either way, hope you have a great day. Enjoy it. It's summertime. Get out there and do something fun. Catch you later.